Hi, this is Amanda from Barocco's Knit Bits, and today I'll be showing you how I work an I-cord. An I-cord is basically just a tube of knitted stitches, and it's worked over a small number of stitches, between about 3 and 6, and because it's such a small number of stitches, you don't work it in the same way that you would work a larger number of stitches in the round. And that'll be what I'm showing you today. You start out using 2 double-pointed needles, and that's all you need. You don't need to use the other 3 that may have come in your pack of 5 when you bought them. You start out with just a basic slip knot and proceed to cast on however many stitches you're planning to use for your I-cord. The more stitches you have, the wider an I-cord you'll get. So I'm going to use 3 because my yarn is pretty thick and that seems like a good width to me. So to start out, you will just knit across your stitches just like you normally would if you were knitting by rows or something like that. And once you've worked the last stitch, normally if you were making just a long strip of 3 knitted stitches, you would then turn your work, and this stitch right here would be the first one that you would knit on your second row. However, for an I-cord, instead of turning the whole work, you keep the right side facing you and slide the 3 stitches all the way to the other end of your double point. And then transfer it from your right hand to your left hand and begin knitting it. Instead of knitting this stitch first, which you would do if you were working rows, this is the first stitch you're going to work. And the trick to an I-cord is making sure that you pull your yarn pretty tightly because it's feeding all the way off of the furthest stitch from the one you're currently working. And if you don't pull it tightly enough, there'll be a noticeable gap between those stitches in your tube. So I'm pulling it pretty tight and then working the rest of the stitches and then repeating that same process again. Instead of turning it, I slide it with the right side still facing me until I reach the end of the double point. I switch hands and knit into the furthest stitch from the one that my yarn is feeding off of. And I want to keep it kind of tight so that I don't get a gap. And then knit the last stitches you have on there. And continue that same process over and over. Always keeping that first stitch kind of snug. It's just a nice way to get a cord that will match the yarn you're using on your project. There are also many techniques that take off with an I-cord and begin using them for different things. So once you have the basic I-cord process down, that opens up a lot of different possibilities of additional techniques you might want to use in your knitting. And let's say that you wanted to work an I-cord that was maybe 24 inches long or something like that. And let's pretend that I have measured this and it is now 24 inches. And to finish off your I-cord, you can trim sort of a sizable tail and thread the tail through the remaining stitches. Through my first one. You can also use a darning needle or a crochet hook if you prefer that way. And once that tail has been pulled through all the remaining live stitches, you can kind of cinch it tight and your I-cord is finished. Once you have your I-cord all done, you can weave the ends back into it, or if you're attaching your I-cord to something, you can use the ends as the thread to it to use while you're sewing those onto them.